This is Earl O'Farrill, Hudson's son, with another commentary for Black World Media Network, Emmett Till. Let me repeat that name again. For a generation, actually 2 generations removed from Emmett Till. Why do I bring up Emmett Till? I bring him up for a reason. As you can see, the Emmett Till investigation, the U.S. National Archives announced that they're releasing thousands of documents on the Emmett Till investigation. This is important. This is a landmark. I have said many, many times and written many, many times in op-ed pieces over the years, the Emmett Till case, lynching, racial violence, in August of 1955, 70 years ago, mark a watershed in the civil rights movement. Through the ugly glare, not that it needed to be tossed any more than it already was in the 50s and even today, on racial violence, not only in the South, but also the nation, and also how the nation responded. It brought in the federal government. It brought in state governments. It brought in civil rights organizations. It brought in religious organizations, a range of individuals, organizations, groups, and agencies in the Emmett Till lynching. One of the most brutal lynchings, beatings, lynching, killings that one could imagine. The federal government took a lot of fire, the Eisenhower administration, for not moving fast enough and not conducting an investigation that would lead to, essentially, convictions of the murderers. And the murderers of Emmett Till were very open about it. They were arrested. They had a farce of a trial. It took them 1 hour for an all-white jury to acquit. Okay, but that's where the drama doesn't end. It begins in the Till case. Mamie Till, his mother, brought him back to Chicago, and I can tell you personally, my father, we lived in Chicago, a few blocks from where Emmett Till lived. He was a Chicago resident on the Southside. My father went to the funeral at Robert's temple. Thousands of people lined up that day. As a kid, I can remember the buzz in the community, people talking about it. In fact, that's all they talked about. My father came home with a shocked look on his face because what Mamie Till, Emmett Till's mother, did was said, I want the world to see what they did to my son, the mutilated, mangled corpse of Emmett Till with an open casket. There was not going to be any closed casket. It was an open casket. And basically, that was a courageous act on her part to show the depth of the barbarity and savagery that her son and many sons like Emmett Till had suffered at the hands of a Jim Crow, racially biased, bigoted, violent South, and by extension condoned by the nation. All right, so the Emmett Till case was a turnaround. Dr. King, the Montgomery bus movement, demonstrations, a Voting Rights Act came out of that, one of the first. Civil rights legislation, one of the first, came out from the Eisenhower administration. And Emmett Till was always the name that came up, that sparked so many, that energized so many, that essentially was a marker of the depth of barbarity, savagery, and also the conditions of African Americans, the exploitation, oppression, and continued Jim Crow ostracism, an outlier that African American people were in this country. No civil rights, no voting rights, nothing. This was the 50s, remember. Emmett Till was a watershed. We're happy that the National Archives released the records on the 70th anniversary of the lynching, brutal lynching of Emmett Till. We don't know what will come out, but it's good that if nothing else, the documents keep before, 70 years later, 3 generations have passed, what Emmett Till represented, racial violence in America, what it represented, and most importantly, in the Trump era, have we really made real progress? And what kind of progress? We're still fighting the same battles that we fought in 1955 on that brutal day that Emmett Till was essentially lynched. We're fighting many of the same battles today, 70 years later. Nonetheless, as is often said, Till was a marker, and we keep the struggle and the fight alive. Thanks again for joining me. I'm Earl O'Farrell Hutchinson of Black Media World Network.